right, welcome Pneuma, and thank you for joining us again for another Grow series lesson and on character development. Welcome back. I have the pleasure of bringing the attribute of integrity to you today. We'll be discussing a few topics about integrity. I know some of you are probably thinking, integrity, what's that? As I have done, but hopefully we will go over this and clarify that for you all. I'd like to define integrity, see what the definition of integrity is, and then look at a character, see what this character study looks like, and then a couple of learning points at the end that we will be discussing, just to wrap it up and summarize it. There are two chapters of this character that I've chosen, and it's Job, a long book, 42 chapters in it. We're not going to go over the whole thing. It's too much to cover. However, there are two chapters I wanted to concentrate on, mainly for those two learning points at the end. So let's talk about this integrity. Integrity, the definition of integrity. So what is it? The quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. The state of being whole and undivided. The Latin word for it is integritas, which means intact. So it's that the meaning of integrity is that wholeness, intact, complete, strong moral character and principles. C.S. Lewis stated that integrity is doing the right thing when no one is looking. That is what integrity is. Often we do the right thing when people are looking. Not integrity, we do that for ourselves and for praise for ourselves. But when you do things of integrity, when you do things well and right, when people aren't looking, then we do that for the Lord, and that is true integrity. There are many examples of integrity in Scripture, but a few of those stand out. One in particular is Job. That's why I chose him today for this study. When we talk about Job, everybody knows who Job is. We've heard the story, and we think, ooh, long story, lots of bad things happening, and not a very popular story for a lot of people. And often people consider that Job is not necessarily a true story. It is a fictitious story. It is written as a poem. So we have to answer that question. Was Job real? Is this a true story? Or was this just a poem that had some moral themes, a good story to learn from? It does have the pattern of just a story that was made up. It's very neat. It's very neatly presented. Different scenes show up within that story, and they all have very neat endings. So it does have the appearance of being put together as a story written specifically to communicate a message. But let's see what the word says about Job. We do know that Job is a real character, and the reason we know this is because it was revered very greatly by the Jews and the Jewish scholars, enough so to be included in the canon. So it is in the Bible, considered to be the oldest book, if not one of the oldest books of the Bible. Been around a very long time, and it has been included. But greater than that is the fact that God referred to Job in prophecy, and then James referred to Job in the New Testament. In Ezekiel 14:12-14, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, if a country sins against me by being unfaithful, and I stretch out my hand against it to cut off its food supply, and send famine upon it, and kill its people and their animals, even if these three men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they could save only themselves by their righteousness, declares the sovereign Lord. So if Job was not real, God would not be referring to Job as someone who is righteous. And he mentions Noah, Daniel, and Job. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked with God. So a key word there is walked with God. God refers to these people this way. All scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, and correcting. So this is God communicating this, and he's saying Noah walked with God. So an attribute there, we walk with God, righteousness comes from that. Daniel resolved to not defile himself around the people that he was in captivity with. He made a decision, and he resolved to not defile himself. Again, a righteous man. And of Job, God calls him this. God calls him blameless and upright. He fears God and shuns evil. So this is what God is saying about Job. Each one of these men showed integrity in suffering or extraordinary circumstances. So they really stand out as characters who had this integrity. In James 5:10-11, brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. So we can see here that clearly Job was a true character. These events did take place. This story was put together as a poem, but this is a poem based on true events and a true person. And so let's talk about that. This is a very long book, and I'm not going to go over all of it clearly, but I'll give you a quick overview of the story, what transpires in this story. Well, God calls a council meeting. Job is referred to as a righteous man, a blameless man, and then God calls a council meeting, calls all of his created beings together. All his angels come to him, and along with all the angels comes Satan. And Satan is the accuser. So as soon as Satan shows up, God asks him, have you seen Job? What do you think about Job? Job is a blameless man, a righteous man. And Satan begins to accuse. Satan is the accuser. That's what Satan means. He not only accuses Job, but he also accuses God. What he says to God is, you really don't know your people. You don't know your servant Job. Satan said to the Lord, the only reason why he is blameless, the only reason why he worships you and has integrity is because you bless him. He has all of these blessings and you're protecting him. So as soon as you take all those wonderful things away from him, then he will curse you. So God agreed. He said, okay, you can remove all of those things, but don't lay a hand on the man. Satan goes away and has influence over everything that Job has. Job loses everything. He loses his livestock, his children, everything is gone. His crops are all gone. So all his wealth and his family, apart from his wife, she sticks around. We'll find out why later on. He loses it all. And then he goes into mourning. So he sits in mourning for a while, and his friends come to join him. When his friends come to join him, they sit there for 7 days in silence. They don't say a word. And then at this point, Job begins to speak. He begins to question why all of these things have happened to him. And then one by one, his three friends start to respond. And the majority of the book becomes this discourse between Job asking questions and his friends answering and giving their opinion about why these things have happened to him. This goes on for a number of chapters. In the end, Job is done with his friends, and then he starts to question God directly. And he asks God, prove to me what I have done wrong. Show me what I have done. As if he was in a court of law saying, show me how I've sinned for you to have treated me this way. And there's a couple of chapters of him doing that. God doesn't answer him there. And then a young man called Elihu shows up, and he speaks and gives his opinion. And what we notice here is that the friends don't respond to this young man, Job doesn't respond to this young man, and God doesn't respond to this young man. So he expresses his opinion, and his opinion is somewhat ignored by most of the characters in this story. And then finally God speaks. And how God starts speaking is by telling Job off. He sets him straight. He starts to communicate to Job who God is and who Job is. He starts asking him, were you around when I created the earth? Were you here when I put all of this into place? Who are you to be asking me these questions? And he does that for a chapter or two. And then what happens is Job repents. Job realizes that he was wrong. He repents. And then he is forgiven. And then all is restored after Job repents for his friends too, because his friends spoke incorrectly about God when they were discussing the situation with him. And that generally wraps it up. After that restoration, he gets back more than he had before. Job is restored. But what we notice is the reason for God doing it was never explained to Job. Job didn't know why all of these bad things had happened to him. God did not share that information with him. This was a deal between God and Satan. And Job still had no idea. However, he trusted the Lord. He turned to the Lord. He repented. He had a different attitude after all of these things had transpired. And that's a general view of the story, a very brief overview of what transpires. So he ends up very, very early in this story. He loses all of his possessions and his children, all his wealth and his family. And let's see how Job responds to this. In Job 1:20, at this Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship and said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. So it doesn't say after all of this, he sulked and moped and got upset. He worshipped. Once this had happened, all of these terrible things had happened to him, he worshipped the Lord. True worship comes from integrity. Worship doesn't lead to integrity. True worship comes from integrity. Because when we understand who we are, when we understand our relationship with the Lord, when we understand who he is, we will worship him in all circumstances. And we can see Job making a statement like that very soon after. In Job 2, Satan accuses again. He comes back into God's presence. And God said, hey, how about Job? How did he do? And of course, as with all liars and people who don't know what they're talking about, his story changes. Okay, well, that didn't work. But if you harm his body, then he'll curse you, because that first one didn't work, so this is really going to do it. So God says, okay, then you can afflict his body. So Satan goes and he afflicts him with sickness and disease. Job ends up with these horrendous sores all over his body in great pain and suffering. So Satan accuses again, and now Satan's body is afflicted. We see why, very soon after that, why his wife was left around by Satan. His wife comes along and said to him, are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die. And Job replied, you are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? His whole family was taken, the wife was not, and we can see why Satan left her in the picture here, because she was not really helping him out, not helping much here. Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die. Not helpful words during a time of trouble and a time of suffering. This word foolish, you are talking like a foolish woman, that denotes, the Hebrew word denotes moral deficiency. She had a deficiency of her moral character. She was not thinking the way he was thinking. She was not acting the way he was acting. He maintained his integrity. So learning point number 1, integrity is held on to. It is maintained. It is a decision, a mindset, a desire of the heart, not something that just happens. So he held on to it. He made a decision to do the things that he thought were right. He didn't just cave to the circumstances and sulk and mope. He continued doing what God expected him to do because he understood who God was. He had the right attitude towards the Lord. Let's look at Job 31. This is where Job explains how he had integrity. Job 31:1. I made a covenant with my eyes, not to look lustfully at a girl. For what is man's lot from God above, his heritage from the Almighty on high? Is it not ruin for the wicked, disaster for those who do wrong? Does he not see my ways and count my every step? If I have walked in falsehood, or my foot has hurried under deceit, let God weigh me in honest scales, and he will know that I am blameless. And he continues in chapter 31, talking about how he had made decisions. He made a covenant. He made decisions. I'm not going to look lustfully at a girl. I'm not going to do things that are dishonest. I'm going to be intentional about taking care of those who work for me. These were decisions he was making. These were not things that just happened. A sub-lesson here is do not trust in prosperity or man. All of those things can go away. Man cannot save us. Prosperity cannot save us. We may be the wealthiest people on earth. We may have all sorts of friends. We may have all these things going on. Those things can disappear in an instant. So we should never trust on those things. Satan deceives and then accuses and then destroys. This is his pattern. He's always done it, and this is what he continues to do. The fruitlessness of prosperity to save us from affliction is a lesson that we can learn here. Do not listen to Satan and the things that he will give us. You can trust in all these other things. We trust in the Lord. A second sub-lesson here is about friends and all those friends out there. Job's three friends were Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. And the best thing they did was sit there in silent sympathy with him for the 7 days. After that, they started spouting their opinion. So after that 7-day period was over, Job started asking questions. And then here come the opinions and all the good ideas. Well, clearly you must have sinned, otherwise God wouldn't be punishing you. God punishes sin, so therefore this is something that you have done. Let me just read that for you in verse 11 here. Job 31, when Job's three friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad and the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him, because they saw how great his suffering was. So, for all the friends out there, best thing you can do in times of suffering, don't spout your opinion. Doesn't matter. Let's just comfort our friends, be there for our friends. And if we do communicate something, we better make sure that this is something that the God has told us to give them, not just a good idea that came from me. Care for our friends, have sympathy, and stay there with them. In silence is usually a very good idea while they suffer. So where does this integrity come from? Let's read Job 28, starting in verse 20. 28 talks about, just to summarize, Job is talking about treasure on earth, and the length that man will go to dig a mine and to build huge caves, to search for treasure. They look for it because it is worth a lot. It is worth the effort. And they go to the ends of the earth to find this treasure. And so his point is, where then does wisdom come from? He's talking about wisdom in this chapter. Where does understanding dwell? It is hidden from the eyes of every living thing, concealed even from the birds of the air. Destruction and death say, only a rumor of it has reached our ears. God understands the way to it, and he alone knows where it dwells. For he views the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he established the force of the wind and measured out the waters, when he made a decree for the rain and a path for the thunderstorm, then he looked at wisdom and appraised it. He confirmed it and tested it. And he said to man, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. To shun evil is understanding. Shunning evil is integrity. And the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And this is a huge statement about wisdom. God has appraised it. God is the only one who knows where wisdom comes from. And he appraised it and confirmed it, and he has tested it. And when he's gone through all of that, he said to man, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. So do we have a fear of the Lord? Do we have reverence for the Lord? Do we understand who he is? When we do have that understanding of who he is, comes humility. And Proverbs 11:2 and James 3:13 talk about the humility of wisdom. When you are wise, when you have true wisdom, you are humble. Humility comes from wisdom because you understand where you come from. You understand truth. And you understand that this wisdom is something that God has appraised. And out of that humility comes integrity. Because now you know, regardless of anything else, I am doing the right thing. I'm doing what God has ordained. I'm doing those things that I know I should do because I know who I am in God's eyes. Integrity, humility, and wisdom. It's easy to have integrity when times are good. We can claim integrity and wisdom and all of these things when times are good. And we can worship the Lord all the time when things are easy. When things become hard, when we are tried, when there are trials, when there are temptations, when all of these things take place, do we then have integrity? Or do we have something a little bit weaker? True integrity leads to worship, humility, wisdom. It all comes together. In suffering and hard times, our true colors are shown when the pressure is on. Sometimes suffering will reveal who has true integrity, who truly is a worshiper of the Lord, who truly has wisdom. When things are easy, not so. And I want to leave you with this question, because this is what it eventually came to for Job. Because Job never got his answer about all these things. He struggled with this with his friends. He struggled with it with God. God never gave him the answer. Yes, Job, this is why you suffered. I was doing it because of X. Never told him that. Is God enough? Job understood that God was enough. He didn't need an answer. He reached a point where he decided, I don't need to know what the answer is. I don't need to understand all this suffering. God is enough. I know who God is. He knew of him, but now he knows him. That was the difference in Job. And he says that right at the end of the book. He says, yeah, I knew of you, but now I know you. God was enough for Job. So the question I'm going to leave with you is God enough? If God does not give you an answer, if you do not know why things are happening, if you don't know why there is suffering, if you are to suffer, if things are not going to go well, is God enough? And are you content to know that the Lord loves you and he cares for you and he has an interest in your life? All right, well, thank you for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful group, and we will see you next time for another Grow lesson. God bless.